Hello, this is a Pacesetter training video on looking at some of the options in the quick entry field, or area rather, of Xactimate. We're not going to go over all these in detail. I just want to point out a few of the more important ones that you would use more commonly. So we're in a little bedroom here that's been dimensioned. We have a couple of line items painting the walls. Let me change this back to P here. Painting one coat. So if you select on a line item, you're going to get various pieces of information here. You can type in codes. This is the category code of the trade. This is painting. This is the selector code or the specific line item that you're going to use within painting. Each have drop-down menus that you can select many different things on, different types of paint in this case. The activity code is the thing that you're actually doing with the line item. You're replacing only, removing and replacing, material only. The calculation field is, you can put numbers in here. You can type specific numbers. If you have it in a dimensioned room using the dimensioning tool, or in a sketched room, a little blue room, you can use what are called variable codes, which are letters or combinations of letters that Xactimate knows what that number is because it's being calculated in the background, and it will actually put that number in the line item. So in other words, this is in a dimensioned room with measurements. I've got W, which stands for walls, and it knows that the walls, all the walls in this bedroom are 432 feet. So if I put W, it puts 432 feet as the quantity. This field right here just is default depending on what line item you pick. It is the unit type. It could be by square foot. Let's drop this menu down. It could be by the pint, the quart. I know this is crazy. We hardly ever use that in our estimating side, but per square, we see this a lot. Lineal feet is very common. LF. Sometimes each is very common. You may be using that depending on the line item. But this is the unit of measurement is what this is. This little box right here is the actual price per unit, whether that's square foot, per lineal foot, each. This is the Xactimate price with the database that you're using. And then this calculates, all these calculations kick out the final dollar amount, RCV total, not counting tax. So again, if we see this is $393.12, we go down and look at the line item, the RCV is $398.04. This is higher because this is including the sales tax. Okay. Some of the other settings here are the coverage. This is a drop-down menu where you can change the coverage and assign this line item to a different coverage. The default setting is the dwelling coverage, unless there is no dwelling coverage set up in the claim. But the default normally is going to be dwelling, but you can change this. You can set up other coverages and reset this to another coverage. This is where you can change the depreciation calculation type, amount, percent, age, and condition. We normally just do age and condition. There are some exceptions where we depreciate by percentage. That would be on if we're replacing roofs on the advanced policy for American Family, or if you're writing any personal property line items, or you're using bid line items. We would depreciate by percentage in those areas. Other than that, we always depreciate for affix by age and condition. And by the way, we do not depreciate typically any labor items. We only depreciate material items. We do depreciate repairs, including full replacements, but also repairs, but we do not depreciate labor-only line items. Again, the only exception to that generally is when we're replacing roofs with affix on their advanced policy. There is some a training video on that as well. This is where you can set the age or the percentage. If you change this to percentage, it'll give you a little area where you can put percent in. And then this is where typically you don't change this, but this is where you can change the condition of the material from average to below average, new or replaced. Typically, you're just going to leave this at average unless it's some extenuating circumstance where it's really deteriorated or it's in really good condition for its age. You may change this. And then lastly here, this is the recoverable or non-recoverable depreciation. If you depreciate an item, the default is recoverable. That means it's going to be recoverable depreciation. If you want to apply non-recoverable depreciation based on the policy language or maybe an endorsement, you would uncheck this box. One thing it's cool to keep in mind is on recoverable depreciation, one way to check real quick, let me get out of this and click OK. If you look over under the depreciation column, let's go to another room here, to the roofing room. If you look under depreciation and you see parentheses by numbers, the parentheses tells you right away that that depreciation for those line items, or that line item, is set to recoverable depreciation. If you see greater or less sign brackets, that tells you it's set to non-recoverable. So let's select this line item, for instance. You see it's set to recoverable. Let's uncheck this box. Select OK, and then look at these brackets. That's a quick reference when you're looking and checking your depreciations in this column that tell you right away quickly what type of depreciation you're having set. The reason why they may be important, set this back to recoverable, is let's say you have an endorsement that makes all the roofing ACV, and you put your roof macro in and you forget to check that. And you've got this roof in, and because you forgot to check, it's all set to recoverable depreciation, but it's supposed to be set to non-recoverable. If you knew this, by giving a quick glance as you're looking over here and checking your depreciation, you would see that all of these numbers in the depreciation column have parentheses. That tells you right away, these are supposed to be non-recoverable depreciation. Parentheses means it's recoverable. That's a clue that tells you right there that all of this depreciation is not set properly. So now we can go change all of these at once by using another tool called Global Changes. We'll get to that in another video, but basically what Global Changes is, I'll show you real quickly. We're not going to do it. Anytime you select two or more items in Xactimate, it's going to open up some buttons here, and one of those is Global Changes, and it does just what it says. It allows you to make global changes to multiple line items. It may be changing the depreciation type, the amount, the coverage type. There's various things you can change. So we'll have another video on using Global Changes. So let's go back and check a couple of the last things. We can still remain here on one or a couple of other things I'd like to go over, and that is this area over here. So when you click, if you don't see this item area and the tag and unit price area, you can always click on the little unit price box and it'll open up this area. So if you go to unit price, there's some things you need to know, some settings. This is where you can set line items to O&P or non-O&P, taxable or tax exempt, contractor or homeowner rates, or change the price. This is pretty rare you're ever going to do this, but this is where you would actually manually change the price. But the things you really use are these three a lot right here. If you're going to apply O&P, you can set that in another area under the parameters tab, but you may need to go in and set some line items, for instance, roofing to non-O&P. We're not allowed to apply O&P to roofing, even though we are applying roofing. So you need to go change all of this. But again, you would use Global Changes to change all of these to non-O&P. It's a lot less work than changing one line item at a time. Tax exempt, where you would use this is, let's say the contractor gives you a price. Let's go into a line item, for instance. Let's say you get a contractor invoice that you're going to pay. We're going to call it, it's going to be a bid line item for flooring, let's say, or siding. I'm just picking stuff. And we're going to say B item, it's bid line item. We'll say siding, and we'll say the contractor gives a bid. Not that we would do this for siding, I'm just using this as an example, but the contractor's invoice says, okay, it's $1,500. And his invoice doesn't show tax on it. It just says $1,500 at the bottom of the invoice, and we're going to pay this. So we would do a bid line item for that. The bid line item would start with the type of category that it is, the trade. In this case, we're going to say siding. And then always in the selector code, you would manually type in B item, bid item is what this is for. And then you can type in the description, whatever you want, siding on the left side, whatever. Then we click in the little price box and type in the number off of that contractor's invoice. But because he's not showing any tax on that. His invoice is actually for $1,500 even. We want to go up in here and select tax exempt. Because if we don't, Xactimate is going to apply tax to that $1,500 and we're going to overpay the insured. So this is an area you want to keep in mind. The other area on this is the contractor and homeowner's rate. When would you use this? Well, let's cancel this out. And let's say that the insured has a little water loss from their washer that overflowed. They get up in the night and they see that and they get their towels and mops out, and the husband and wife spend a few hours mopping up the floor and cleaning all that up. They mitigated the water loss. It did some damage, but they got all the water up. Well, we owe the insured for that per hour, but we're not going to pay them a contractor rate for that. Contractor rates are much higher because they have overhead, they're a business entity, they have payroll and taxes and all that, so they have a much higher rate than a homeowner rate. But we will pay insureds to do certain work that they take care of that we do owe them for, but we're going to pay them a homeowner's rate. And there's a setting that we can use to change that. So let's say we go in here in this water loss. So again, we're going to pay the insured, let's say 4 hours, 2 people, 2 hours each. That's 4 hours total. And it's a water mitigation. They cleaned water up off the floor. So we want to use that trade, WTR. LAB is always labor, whatever trade. And it says water extraction and remediation technician per hour. Well, that's the insured, but here's where we're going to change this right here. The default is always set to contractor. We want to change this to homeowner, but look at the rate. The contractor rate in this database that I'm using is $81.63. Watch what happens when I select homeowner rate. It dramatically goes down, $27.02. We're going to pay that to the insured, though. They're owed that money. They mitigated. They're just not really due contractor rates. They don't have the overhead and expenses of a contractor. So we're going to put 4 hours in here. It's labor only. We're not going to depreciate labor. That's what we're going to pay. However, we're going to change the description because this isn't a technician per hour. Insureds. This is what we would type. Insureds labor to mitigate water. Something like that. Something reasonable. Just put a decent description in here. Say, okay, there's our line item. We're good to go. The last thing I'd like to show you real quick here is one pretty cool area. You may or may not know this. Any line item that you click on, if you get over to this area where we were, if you click on the item image, most will have an image, not all. This line item we're on is for a skylight, flat, fixed. This is the size, 9 to 10 square feet. And there's the image, great. But this is where it's really important that you can use this. Click for detail. This has a lot of information on that particular item. Very important info if you're trying to find out info. So it includes the fixed deck, skylight, the flashing kit. This is important because some adjusters, if they have damage to a skylight, they may write the whole skylight as one line item, and then they'll add a second line item for a skylight flashing kit. But we would not owe that. Why? Because if you opened up the skylight item detail image, it says that it includes a flashing kit. If we're going to replace the whole skylight, it already includes the flashing kit. So this is why this is important. Sometimes you need to read this to see what it includes and what it does not include. If we think we owe something else to facilitate the repair properly, and we open this item image and read, and it does not include something that we think needs to be reasonably included, then we could go include that other line item. If anybody asks why, we could say, well, because this needs to be in there to make the repair properly, and we've looked, and that item is not included in the first line item in Xactimate, so we're adding it. It tells you it includes the labor cost to remove a skylight, discard in a job site waste receptacle. It's the quality type and size. It references a certain type or equal, like, kind, and quality of what type of the material it's trying to reference, the same, similar, or type of material. Tells you whether it's green or not, commercial, residential. But here's some other important stuff. The average life expectancy. This, especially right here, is important. This is how Xactimate applies depreciation when you put an age in and you depreciate by age. If it knows the life expectancy, it can calculate and put the depreciation in. For instance, if you have this line item, this is 18 years is the life expectancy according to Xactimate. So let's go in here, for instance, and I'm going to depreciate this by 9 years old. I'm going to say this is 9 years old. Well, it should put 50% depreciation. And it does. Of course, it's depreciating the materials. You may ask, well, wait a minute. It's only depreciating $367 on $956. Why? Remember, this number includes the labor, the material, and tax. Xactimate is only depreciating that 9 years age. It's only depreciating the material portion of this 900 and some odd dollars. So it is 50%, I guarantee you. It's using your age that you put in against that 18-year life expectancy of that skylight, and in the background, it's doing 50% depreciation on the material portion of this only, of this line item. This line item, again, has material, labor, and tax built into one line item. So just keep in mind that that click for detail is a very valuable piece of information that you can always click on if you want to see a little bit more information on what this line item is, what it includes, what it doesn't include, how Xactimate sees the quality level. It's just got a wealth of information in it. So I hope that helps you and a little bit more on how to use the quick entry area in Xactimate. Keep in touch. We have many more training videos. If you have questions, please give your field manager or supervisor a call. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks and have a great day.